All right. Thank you. All right. Good evening. I was thinking I might talk from down there. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. But yeah, there's quite a few of you, so that's great. All right. Do I need to warm you up, or are you ready to dive straight in? Yeah, that seemed to be the murmuring of dive straight in. So yeah, I'm just here to help. And I've had to learn that how some of us need to be helped is to be totally and utterly disillusioned about God first. So my first couple of minutes, I'm going to work really hard to disillusion you about God. And then we're going to talk about wholeness, and then we're going to talk about ego, all right? So hold me to that, because, my trouble is these days, when I was younger, I'd be getting up here thinking, oh, God, what do I say? And now I'm thinking, oh, God, what do I leave out? Try to remember, I'm trying to stick to those three areas. Why am I talking about, if I'm really going to help you, I've got to disillusion you about God, because you're actually stuck if you can't point to the last time you were totally disillusioned. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, I can't disillusion you unless you first have an illusion. Think about that. You get the word illusion and you put the prefix dis in front of it. That means to undo or be released from. So to be disillusioned is to be released from an illusion. And some of us, if we've been around church a long time, we have some illusions about God, and we've gotten stuck. A bit like Peter, he's hungry, Book of Acts, he goes up, he falls into a trance. By the way, we're told we're not allowed to have them, but he had one. And so this sheet comes down with clean and unclean animals, and God says, rise, kill and eat. And listen, Peter argues with God. Tells God, no, I can't do that. Listen, God, you got this wrong. I can't. I'm a good Jewish boy, and I don't do that sort of stuff. Far be it from me. So he's arguing with God in the name of God, and that is, he needed a disillusionment moment, which he got, by the way, and thank God he did, because that disillusionment released him to go and speak to the Gentiles, which triggered a whole chain of events, if you're familiar with that. So disillusionment is really important, and our problem is we have a God, or challenge. We have a God who says, my ways are far above your ways. My thoughts are far above your thoughts. God is trying to tell us, I am beyond your comprehension. That's what makes me God. The problem is when the limited minds of men try to corral this unlimited God, we end up with idols, self-created gods that we need to be disillusioned from. We made them up. We made up a God in our heads, and now we're performing religious gymnastics to keep the God of our imagination happy. Oh, I didn't get up at 6 o'clock this morning. Oh, God's angry at me. Well, what a petty God you've got. What a petty God. He's like, I'm not answering your prayer. You didn't read your Bible this morning. You made that God up. I mean, he's running the universe and the galaxies, and he's worried you didn't get up at 6 o'clock? Come on. And so for some of us, we've developed this, what I call Mount Doo-doo philosophy. And what it is we believe that if we can just gather enough do enough prayer, do enough Bible study, and stand on top of all of our do, we can give ourselves mental permission to get closer to God. All right? But according to your faith be it unto you. You're doing that to yourself. And do is very slippery stuff. And it's not long before you've said the wrong thing, done the wrong thing, and down Mount do you go, and now you're telling yourself, I'll have to get all that do back together again to feel close to God again. You are serving a God of your imagination. You're doing that. That's not God. And our problem is we've got this God that's mysterious, that's beyond our comprehension, but we're trying to make him relational and help people. So we're in this tension. So the trap is we humanize God. We humanize him to make him more relational. And so it creates, the problem with that is we create this illusion that we're calling God. You're with me? Thank you, both of you. How about, some of you are already disillusioned. It's like, what the heck? Maybe we should have stayed at home. So, we just really need to be careful. And, we've developed a lot of, language that implies separation. That is really born a little bit out of Mount Doo-doo theology, right? There is no Mount Doo-doo because we have a finished work of Jesus Christ. There's a reason why the Bible labors the point that Jesus said it is finished, then he ascended back to the right hand of the Father and he sat down. Why does the Bible want us to know that? Because that's what you do when you're finished. That's what you do when there's nothing left to be done. You sit down. But we seem to be thinking there's more to be added. Now, if I told you it is finished and you keep chanting more at me, I'd be slapping you. I'd be saying, I told you it's finished, for crying out loud. So this whole thing of more, now I'm disillusioning you, or I'm trying to, more is not so much God doing more is you seeing more. Paul's prayer in Ephesians is that the light of God would hit our hearts so we would see the hope, the power. He's praying for our eyes to see something. Not that God does more, but we see more. And so I like to jolt people by telling them that God's not going to do any more for you than what he's already done. For the rest of your Christian life, all that's going to happen to you is a veil's going to come off. You're going to see Jesus as your Savior. You'll step into that. God didn't do it. You saw it. You see Jesus as baptizer in the Spirit. You step into that. You see him as healer. You step into that. You see him as provider. You step into that. Jesus didn't move. He's watching you see the finished work. And so the rest of your Christian life, God's not going to do. So I'm all for praying for more, but let's get it right. Because if we think God has to do more, that implies it's not finished. It's getting quiet in here. Some people are getting disillusioned, which I hope is necessary. And so we have all this stuff that we have. I know we like to call ourselves God chasers, but how do you chase a God who's promised never to leave us or forsake us? How do you do that? It's like, what? Didn't we hear that? It's like, does God have a hiding place? Yes, he does, and it's right there. And it's like, can you just move away a bit so I can sort of chase you? But it's just like you're right up on me. So we've invented these things, but we have to go, hang on a minute. Is this just our language? And I'll tell you why we invent them. Because our ego wants to get involved in our faith. And the ego wants to know, I've done something. Me. It wants to know, well, you didn't get up at 6, but I did. So I guess I'm closer to God than you are right now. I've got more doo-doo happening. Look at that. So the ego loves to play that game. So the reason why so often in church life we end up playing the doo-doo game and end up with this language that somehow subtly found its way into implying separation, implying that doo-doo is necessary, is because it's our ego that's getting involved. Ego has a great way of turning everything beautiful and pure into Christianity into self-gratification in the name of the Lord. in the name of the Lord. Have you been in those prayer meetings where the person is really letting everybody know, so Lord, I got up at 6 o'clock like you told me to. Everybody, oh, yeah. And I've developed calloused on my knees praying to you. What are you talking to God like that, or are you just telling us? You wouldn't want to miss the prayer meeting to hear the gossip. You know how Pastor Marcus hurt me, but God, I forgive you. Why? But, yeah. Don't miss that prayer meeting, man. You're going to hear what is really praying. It's our ego that's praying. And so this is why Jesus said, if you want to follow me, you need to deny yourself. Take up your cross and follow me, which implies an ongoing lifestyle of denying a self. Now, that's not punishment, that's freedom. Because you know why? It's crazy to think that this self that you've got to deny is your true self. There must be a self that you're not meant to have. And that's why he's telling you to deny it. And there is, and we'll call it our egoic self, our self-created self, our false self. So we invent an egoic self, which we'll talk about, a false self, your unique self. Obviously, that's given to you by God. But if Jesus is saying, if you want to really follow me, what he's really saying in today's language is you have to deal with your ego. Because your ego will never let you forgive. It will never let you love your neighbor as yourself, live a life of generosity, because ego is constantly developing the inferior, superior comparison, measurement, all those things. So let me disillusion you about wholeness. You are already whole, perfect, whole, and complete. Some people are telling us, no, that's something we have to, strive towards. No, I'm going to tell you, you are already perfect, whole, and complete. There's just something stopping that. And what's stopping it? Suppressing your true, perfect, whole, and complete self, your unique self, from rising to be everything it is your egoic self. It acts as a suppression. And that's why Jesus is saying you've got to get that off so your spirit self, your true self, can rise. There is no such thing. I'm chuckling because this is all disillusionment for some people. There's no such thing as an immature spirit. You can't have one. And that would be like saying, holding up a tennis ball and saying, oh, I'm so sorry, this tennis ball, it can't bounce yet because it hasn't learned how to bounce. It hasn't been taught the Greek root meaning of the word bounce yet. And so, look, it's got to grow up into a fully mature tennis ball. No, that's not how it is. Tennis ball does what tennis ball is. It's perfect, whole, and complete. It doesn't need to be taught how to behave like a tennis ball. And if you get spirit, the breath of God in you, of course God didn't give you a little puff. That's all you get. And then it will need to mature from there. No, he gave you the full thing. The full thing. And so now the problem is not lack of wholeness in that regard, that something is operating in your life to suppress your true self, your spirit self, perfect, whole, and complete self from actually rising. And that false self is the one he's pointing to. And he's not saying, I won't let you be my disciple unless you do that as a qualifier. He's telling us the truth. He's saying, listen, if you want to follow me, your ego will prevent you from walking in my footsteps. You will battle against those things. All right? So wholeness is actually synonymous to walking in the Spirit. You think of the gifts of the Spirit, that is the way a whole person behaves. Love, joy, peace, long-suffering. They're compatible with whole behavior. So my word for wholeness, if you want to flip it around, is I'm really talking to you about walking in the Spirit. But to walk in the Spirit, you have to deny the flesh. Okay, Paul's favorite word in some ways for the egoic self. And so let's think about it. Here's the way I want to explain it. Here's this tennis ball. I grab this tennis ball. I plunge it into a bucket of water, and what do I immediately feel the tennis ball wanting to do? I feel that it wants to rise. So the focus is not on the tennis ball now, the focus is on the hand that's preventing it from doing what it wants to do. This tennis ball didn't need to be educated. You know, if ever they put you in a bucket of water, you rise, man, you rise. No, it already knew that. It innately knew. It wants to do what it is. Spirit doesn't need to be educated about being spirit, right? So the focus, stop focusing on the Spirit, which is perfect, whole, and complete already. Focus on the hand. See, spirituality, you becoming more spirit, is more about you dealing with your ego. That's what it's about. It's about you getting your ego out of the way. And that's why sometimes our journey towards wholeness is more about what we're unlearning than what we're actually learning, because we have adopted too many of these illusionary things about coming into wholeness in God. How are we going with this? Okay. So what I want to do is spend some time talking about the egoic self. How did we even get this? Well, it actually started way back in the garden. It's an amazing narrative. We're told in Genesis that Adam and Eve were naked and not ashamed. And then after acquiring a knowledge that God never intended us to have, a self-awareness was born through this knowledge. And so we're told a few verses this way, they were naked and not ashamed. They acquired this knowledge, and now we're told they're naked and ashamed. What happened? Why did here not ashamed? Now he's hiding and ashamed. So God's now asking, where are you? Adam says, I was naked and so I hid. And here's the beautiful question, first question in the Bible. Who told you you were naked? Now, it wasn't the devil. I know we want to blame the devil for everything, but no, it wasn't the devil. It was the beginning of the egoic self. The beginning of a voice talking in his head that he had not recognized yet to be a foreign voice, not a demonic voice, but the voice of the egoic self. You know what? People are looking at you and you're naked and you should hide and you should be, and by the way, it's all her fault. So that self had begun. And so even back there, God's trying to alert us to the one thing that breaks our enslavement to our egoic self. And it's such a simple thing, but powerful thing. And it's awareness. And if we can get to it, I trust we will, that's all it takes. If I achieve nothing else today but to tease away from you this voice that's been so running a commentary in your head for years, and I can tease it away for you to look at it and realize that's my egoic self talking, because my perfect, whole and complete self don't talk like that. Do you understand? So even back there, God's saying, well, I didn't tell you that. So who told you? Who told you you should be ashamed, that you should be hiding? All right? And so let me give you a few metaphors, analogies to see if he can identify this false self and how it forms. Imagine as a child, just for fun, you made a hand puppet. And, it's pretty cool. You put the eyes and you made sure a mouth was there and you gave it some ears. And when people would talk to you just for fun, you would talk back to them through your puppet. You'd give it a particular voice and it was fun. But years go by and you kept doing it. And what happened was you kept doing it so much that you lost awareness that this is me and this is my puppet. And what happened was it so merged that you started to believe that this was me. And when this puppet spoke, that was me. That was me talking. When the puppet talked, that's me. Poor me, whatever. And after a while, the gap that was meant to be there between perfect, whole and complete true self, the awareness that this is me, this is the puppet, is gone, and the puppet moved to here. And now the puppet is there, and it is suppressing, it is, in some ways, the stronger voice in your life. You follow that analogy? And so this puppet is the talking self. That's always, but he said that, and and it's running this continual commentary. It's constantly evaluating, etc. and so on. Let's see if we can look at it another way. I'm just going to put a few things. On one of my trips here, I drew this, but we've got some time to maybe go into it a little bit more. If that was the conscious part of your life above the dotted line, and this is the subconscious, sitting in this subconscious area is your ego needs, let's call it, all right? And we have ego needs, three of the stronger ones would be power and control. That's very strong ego need in some people. Esteem and affection is a strong ego need. Okay. And security, I'm scribbling just to go faster. Security and survival. All right. And what happens is, as our ego, our puppet self is being formed, because of the way it's formed, it tends to polarize towards one of these needs. All right? So it's because of power and control, esteem and affection, each of them are attracted towards certain things in life, but they avoid. Like, okay, power and control. I doubt that one is going to volunteer for hospitality. Okay? More than likely, power and control will volunteer for children's church so they can boss those kids around. Okay? So power and control need. I want to, no, you can't go to the toilet now. You sit and you hold it. Kids, all right? So they're not going to, no, I'll pour the tea. No, they're not going to do that. That's not enough power and control. So they're attracted towards certain things and they're avoiding certain things. So here you are, I'm watching you grow up, and I think I'm meeting you because I'm watching your ego attracted towards certain things and avoiding, and I'm watching what I think is you, but it's really your persona. All your attracting and avoiding behavior, I'm watching and I'm thinking, oh, I know that person. But really, I'm watching your ego behave towards attracting and avoiding, right? How am I going? Okay. Yeah, Mark's affirming. That's good. All right. Okay. So, am I really meeting you? Am I really meeting you? So now, the problem is, all the things I'm getting involved with out of my egoic needs, I am there with a hidden agenda. And this is a cancer in the church, and it's a cancer in relationships. It is, you can see why Jesus said, you've got to deal with this, because it is so destructive. Why? Because let's project this into a relationship. I've got this power and control. I'm attracted towards certain ladies. This is my future wife, but I'm avoiding some others. So is this prospective spouse of mine meeting me? And so we both learn to do the egoic dance. I work out the sort of persona she needs me to be because she's this. And I'm working out, and she's worked out what I need her to be. And so we're both in this relationship projecting a persona but not really being our true selves. How long do you think we could keep that up before one of us goes, I can't keep this up anymore? And then we say, well, I don't love you anymore. Why? Because you quit giving me what I needed. So we're in a relationship with a hidden agenda. We're in church life with a hidden agenda. This is resentment waiting to happen. It's resentment waiting to happen because it's not real sacrifice. It's you getting your egoic needs met. And so esteem and affection. This is an interesting one too. Of course, these are the people that need that. And so in a relationship, if they're not getting the esteem and affection, they'll flip over to power and control, raise their voice, thump the kitchen table. And if they still don't get what they want, they withdraw. They pull, slam the door, I'm off. So you see these egoic cycles. So here we have the hidden agenda, but sooner or later the whole thing explodes because it's resentment waiting to happen. And sure enough, I withdraw with some lame excuse, the Lord is leading me on or something like that. But really it's my ego didn't get its proper hamburger. And I'm back down here. I drop below the conscious to the subconscious, but it's not long before I'm back out here again, attracted, avoiding, still feeding the persona, hidden agenda. What a terrible cycle. You've seen this relation, you've seen this in church life. No wonder Jesus said, listen, if you want to follow me, you got to deal with this. Is this making sense? All right? And so what breaks the egoic cycle is awareness. It's really quite simple. In fact, if I was charging you money for today, you'd feel ripped off because it's so simple. All you've done really is realized, imagine watching Sesame Street for years and believing Kermit was real, and then one day the curtain drops and here's Kermit on the end of a man's hand. That's a moment of a disillusionment, right? It's like, what the? Well, we need that with our ego. We need the aha moment where we've moved the puppet from here to here. Do you understand what I'm saying? And slowly but surely, as you identify the ego speaking, and some of you could be sitting there thinking, what's this voice? What's he talking about? That's the voice. You've become so familiar with it, you see. Oh, I ain't got no voice. Yeah, that's the voice. And you call it the voice of me, the story of me when the puppet's talking. They don't know what I'm going through. It's just so hard. Try and tell me that your spirit self talks like that. Really? You honestly think? See, you've been so duped into thinking that's the voice of you, perfect, whole and complete you, that when your puppet's talking, just like Adam hiding, I should be naked and I'm ashamed. I've got to hide. He just totally bought it. And he saw it as the voice of me. And God says, well, no. Who told you? Not you told you, but a voice had begun now speaking to him. So what breaks this egoic cycle that people get trapped in and waste their whole lives in this egoic cycle, convinced all the time that they're right, of course, is awareness. It's this moment of separation, of realization that that's not me. That's my egoic self. So I like to encourage people to try deliberately to catch their ego. It's very simple, really. The next time you're pulling out and about to post something on social media, ask yourself, why am I really doing this? Am I trying to say to people, my life is awesome and yours sucks right now? That's your puppet, yeah. That's not God. That's not your perfect, whole and complete self. That's yourself going, I'm so superior and I need this social media to have all the filters and, the angle just right so the room looks awesomely full and la la la. Well, actually, let's stop and think about that. See, if we're not brave enough to tease this out, to get the puppet back out here. Now listen, it'll always be there. We are not trying. In the Greek, it was a present, ongoing tense that Jesus was using and denying the self, taking up the cross. So it's just realizing that's not me. It's stop thinking that that's the voice of me, the story of me. It's like having this movie, this drama going on in our heads all the time, and we're writing people in to the script of our movie. You are not your thinking. If you think you are your thinking, you're way down deep inside that puppet. You're not your thinking. Your spirit before you are mind. Now, how do I know that you're not your thinking? Well, the Bible says in Hebrews that Jesus Christ, our high priest, we can approach him knowing that he was tempted in, who knows it? Every way, just like we are without sin. How many ways was Jesus tempted? So, and it was just like we are. So Jesus Christ had pornographic thoughts, had homosexual thoughts, had adulterous thoughts. Come on, you pile it up there. He had them all. Oh, we're being disillusioned, I hope. What? Are you kidding me? Well, it just said that Jesus Christ was tempted. What's a temptation? It's a thought. You can't have a temptation without a thought. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but I'm being tempted. No, it's a thought. You've got it there. He was tempted in every way just like we are, and yet without sin. Why? Because he never acted on any of it. It was just a thought that passed over the horizon of his mind, and he watched it. He had the thought out here and he looked at it, but he never thought, I am that. If Jesus Christ was his thoughts, if his thoughts were identification of him, then Jesus Christ was the most sinful man that ever walked the planet. Because he was tempted in every way, just like we are. Come on, are you working with me here? So you're not your thoughts. Your thoughts, you're sitting in church and you're listening and here comes this thought. Oh, I'm such a terrible Christian. I'm in church. No, that's you. Just watch the thought. Well, that's a weird one. Look at that. Look, geez, where did that come from? Never think, I am that. Because as soon as you do, the guilt starts, the shame starts, and all those sorts of things start. Now, some of you who know your Bible say, Jesus said, if you so much look at a woman and have that, well, you got to know your Greek a bit, because there's at least 3 words that Greeks could use for thoughts. And the one he's reaching for there is somebody that's fantasizing. So this isn't a passing cloud thought. This is somebody that's got a hold of that, and really going to town on that one, imagining some stuff. They're not just watching it float over the horizon. They're starting to fixate on it. And once you start doing that, once you start gripping that thought, that's when you're on the slippery slope downward. But don't tell me that you're your thoughts. How could that be? One minute you're this, next minute you're that. How could that be? Your perfect, whole and complete self is constant. It's not a variable. It's not up and down like that. Your puppet is. Your egoic self is up and down all over the place. It's having good days and bad days. Your spirit self never has a bad day. Never has a bad day. It's a constant all of the time. It doesn't fluctuate at all. Now, some of you also who know your Bible, so what about the Bible says that man had a bad spirit, this man well, the Hebrews always spoke about the inner life using this terminology. So again, we need to know a bit about the culture and how they're using. When they referred to the heart of a man, they were not talking even about his spirit. They were talking about everything to do with his inner life. That was all they were referring to. So again, let's be careful we don't develop these illusions that don't actually exist. We need to be able to start. Now, what I teach my students is it's all about catching the ego. All right? Your ego will never come out on an altar call and say, that's it, I want to get saved. No. You're going to, for the rest of your life, need to take up your cross and deny yourself. But the more you can move your puppet out there, the easier it's going to get. You can just hear that, but you're going to know, I am not that. All right? And so moving, starting to identify. So what I teach them is when you catch that thought, that egoic thought, you hear the voice. I say, come on, don't be disappointed. Do a little praise dance. Wow, yeah, that's awesome. Why are we doing a praise dance? Because your ego needs your unconscious cooperation in order for it to have control over you. And once you break that unconscious cooperation, it's like pulling your hand out of Freddo the Frog. It's like immediately the puppet collapses. It needs your hand in it. And as soon as you realize that's my egoic self, it's like this moment of actually pulling the hand out of that. So how long does it take? So you might be thinking, but I've been in this habit pattern for so long. Surely it's going to take a lot. No, it won't. No, it doesn't. That would be like saying there's 20 years worth of darkness in this room. So when we turn on the light, it's going to take a while. This is, we got to get. This 20-year-old darkness. Come on. You mean to tell me darkness? Listen, I've been here for 20 years. No, it yields immediately because the only reason darkness can be there is because light isn't. That's the only reason it can be there. So as soon as light rocks up, darkness can't be there. So in the same way with your egoic self, don't start building this big spiritual, wow, that's for the select, elect, the chosen, frozen, I am so not, in that league. That's all nonsense. There is nothing to be applauded. Spirituality is no great achievement at all. None at all. And if you want to keep believing that, well, you're back to Mount Doo-Doo. You are just being yourself. If you believe that you're created in the image of God and God is spirit, hello, how could it be when you are being like the image of God, an image bearer on the earth, primarily spiritual? Is that a great achievement? God's actually made you for himself. He hardwired you for himself, relationally. So again, there's this whole really hard bust your fufu valve to get, into this. No, it's all nonsense. We made all that up, and our ego made it up. Because the ego feels good about that. I deserve it. I deserve. No, you don't. You don't deserve any of it. All right? It's all a gift. All right? And so if we can just realize, wow, okay, that's been this whole voice that has been guiding me. You just need to start catching it. Yeah. Now, for me, it would be good before you left here today if you could identify what your primary egoic need is out of these three. Mine is power and control. And why am I quite perfectly happy to stand up here and tell you that? Because that means I've got my puppet out here. If I couldn't tell you, then it's too intermesh. But I know when this puppet is talking, I know when my puppet would talk when my kids were misbehaving, I wasn't worried about my kids. I was worried about how they made me look. Because I wanted power and control. I wasn't so, I'm worried about their behavior. No, don't act like that, because I'm worried how people will see me. So was that a concern? No, that was my egoic parenting. Why am I annoyed with that person? Because I had it in my head that things were going to go a certain way because I'm controlling and I've got it all worked out, and it didn't. So where's this annoyance coming from? See, if you can't find the voice, I'm going till 5, is that right? If you can't find the voice, try to find the emotion that's coming from the voice. Okay, what does that mean? That means, if I go back to my analogy of annoyance, when I watch my kids behaving a certain way, and the first thing doesn't register is the thought, but the first thing that registers more the emotion of annoyance, then I use that registration of annoyance to go to that emotion and say, what's your problem? Why are you annoyed? Where's this all coming from? And if that emotion could talk, what it would say was, I had a picture in my head of how this was all supposed to go, because that's my power and control thing. Now, they were being nothing wrong with what they did, but I needed this thing to work out how I wanted it to be. So my annoyance was actually egoic. Now, in church life, we've learned to camouflage that by saying, the Lord spoke to me about how this was meant to be. No, that was my ego. And I've got to own that. The number of times I've sat with my team, we've had a conversation, and they've left the room, and I'm ticked. I'm feeling annoyed. And when I've had to walk out what I'm teaching you. This isn't something, this is the great podcast I heard one day. This is me learning. I've had to pull that emotion out and look at it and say, what's your problem? Because really what that emotion is it's actually a merciful flashing light on the dashboard of your life going, Aruga, we have a problem here. There's an issue here. Please look at this. All right? And instead of, that's the brave way to do it. The cowardly way to do it is try and camouflage that annoyance with some spiritual stuff. I feel the spirits on that person. No, it was probably something that they said that triggered some residual pain in me. Years ago, I'd noticed that we'd be talking and doing stuff, and there was one particular staff member, she didn't know she was doing it, but as she talked and was making a point, she'd point like this, like that. And I said, but it was like she had this laser beam coming out the tip of her finger, and I was feeling this, and I was going, boy, that's really weird. But I was down the track further enough with this stuff to know that's not her. That's something that she's triggering in me. And when I took that, and just got quiet and tried to pull that apart without trying to make it all hooky spooky and make it all about her, the Lord reminded me, that's what your father used to do before he got violent. He'd start pointing. Isn't that amazing? I'd completely forgotten that. Completely forgotten. My dad was a heavy drinker, and he could just almost predict how this would escalate, and then the pointing would start, and that was completely gone. Now here I am as a 50-year-old man having this lady in discussion doing like this, and see, that's residual pain. That's pain that's no longer, you can put a memory to it. It's dropped way down in here, and you need God's grace and ministry to actually melt that residual pain. But start with the emotion. Own that. This person, obviously esteem and affection, they need to be wanted, they need to be affirmed, and they'll be sort of fishing constantly. That wasn't so good, was it? What are they? No, it was awesome. Yeah, that's my hamburger. Now, of course, we're in an encouraging environment, but when that's a need, that's a need. It's not just nice, it's a drug, and I need it. I need it. This person here, security, well, they don't like change because they're in, I call them like the turtles. They're never far from home, Whenever something happens, they're pulling and they're home. They're heading for home. This is when they shut the door and it's safe. They need everything to stay the same. This person's going, well, you know what? I thought, this person, the butt cheeks are clenching, This guy thinks this is great, very spontaneous. This person's affirming, going, yeah, because they want to be in on, the whole, yeah. And this person's quietly going, oh, no, can we all be nice to one another? I hope this isn't going to go bad. And so you can see how this whole thing happens. So it'd be great if you could leave here today saying, yeah, this one's me, that one's me. Why is that? Great, because that means you're starting to move that away. You're not saying I am that. You're saying when my puppet talks, it has a propensity to be along those lines. Okay, my time has gone, and I hope I've given you something helpful. All right, bless you.